Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, and welcome to the 38th Annual HDSA National Convention and to our HDSA Research Forum this morning. As Jamison said, I'm Dr. Eric Johnson. I'm the Chief Mission Officer at HDSA. Welcome to all of you in the room. I hope you've been having a great convention so far. I don't know about you guys, but I'm still finding glitter from the mask that I was wearing on Thursday night, so please check your pillows, your washcloths. It's going to stay with you forever. For those of you who are joining us via the live stream right now, welcome. We're glad to have you here as a part of this too. And I would also like to say a future hello to the people who will be watching this when it's recorded and posted on the HDSA website. So as I said, I'm Dr. Eric Johnson. I'm the Chief Mission Officer at HDSA, and I oversee all of our HDSA mission programs and services. These include advocacy, clinical care, community services, disability, education, research, and youth and young adults programs and services. The HDSA mission team and the entire HDSA staff team is here this weekend, and I am so honored to serve alongside of them to help bring resources, programs, services to you in the HD community. Today we're going to focus on one part of our HDSA mission services, and that is research. At HDSA, we support research in several different ways. First, HDSA supports research by directly funding cutting-edge HD science. We have 3 grant mechanisms that support this work. These are the Donald A. King Summer Research Fellowship. I have it all written out because trying to say that fast, I stumble over it every time, and I'll probably do so for the rest of the day with the other titles. But that one's a 10-week research program for undergraduate students working in an HD lab in an academic setting. This fellowship helps introduce the next generation of HD scientists to HD and experience that can help shape their future course of study. I hope all of you had a chance to attend the session yesterday morning where we had 7 past Don King Fellows present their work. If not, I hope you look them up on the app, see who they are, and try to meet them over the course of the weekend, because the quality of their research and the way they presented it yesterday was incredible. And I really hope that we see more from them in the future. The Berman Topper HD Career Development Fellowship provides 3 years of funding for researchers who are early in their careers, within 5 years of graduating with their PhD or completing their residence or fellowships. The Berman Topper Fellows are pursuing innovative lines of scientific inquiry into HD biology and have a desire to make HD part of their career plan. There's a session later this afternoon where 3 of them will be presenting their work, and you're also going to see 2 more of them on the stage here shortly at the latter part of this session this morning. Lastly, the HD Human Biology Project supports patient-centric research in labs and clinics around the world. At HDSA, we believe that the most relevant observations to help us understand HD biology is gathered from human beings living with the disease. Recipients of the Human Biology Project grant are working directly with human subjects or human cells. These scientists are pushing the field closer to meeting our goals of identifying effective therapies for people living with Huntington's disease. Recipients of the Human Biology Project grant have gone on to become leaders in HD science, and they're also serving as mentors for the next generation of HD researchers, bringing more people into the field. The second way that HDSA supports research is through research communications. We want to make sure that you are kept up to date with what is happening in HD science and drug development. HD Trial Finder is a service where you can learn about current trials, be matched to trials that are appropriate for you, and you're going to learn more about this later today at the Clinical Trials Showcase. We also publish the HDSA This Week in Huntington's Disease Research blog, which shares important research news and can be found on our website and social media channels. HDSA hosts webinars with scientific and clinical trial updates, where we ask companies to present the data from their studies, even if it's not positive, because we want you to know what the outcomes are of these trials. We want you to know what that means. Last, and certainly not least, HDSA partners with HD Buzz in their efforts to make HD science understandable to everybody and available to everyone around the world. We're lucky to have the HD Buzz team here today, and they'll be up on stage a little bit later, so stay tuned. The third way that HDSA is involved in research is through patient and community engagement. The HD Coalition for Patient Engagement, HD COPE, is a program done in partnership with the Huntington Society of Canada. HD COPE is a group of volunteers from around the world who meet with scientists and drug companies to share their real-life experiences of living with HD and how that relates to all things research and clinical trials. They are seen, listened to, and heard by these companies working in the HD space. Those companies then incorporate the lessons and information the HD COPE team shares into advancing science and moving possible treatments closer to clinic. I want to emphasize the importance of that last part, right? Patient and community engagement, before I introduce our first speaker this morning. My background is in the clinic. I work directly with people living with Huntington's disease and their families. I helped run clinical and observational trials and did that for many years. But I was first introduced to HD by serving as a cognitive rater on the PREDICT HD study, which was looking for the earliest signs of symptoms in a group of people who knew that they carried the genetic expansion for HD. Participants completed a number of assessments, including cognitive tests, motor exams, and questionnaires about their mood, as well as providing blood samples and going through an MRI. The data they provided over multiple years of visits has helped shape what we know about HD today. Reflecting back on that study and that experience, and thinking about others like it, Pharos, Cohort, Track HD, I want to highlight the power of the data that is collected from members of the HD community. The Enroll HD study, which we heard about on Thursday, and so many of you in this room are taking part in it, has over 21,000 people in it from across the globe, and has amassed an enormous amount of data. Because of your participation, these studies and the clinician-reported data that they provide has been instrumental in driving HD science forward and changing what we know about the disease. As valuable as that data is, however, we recognize there's more data out there that isn't really fully captured by these studies, which are conducted by clinicians at medical centers. There is power in data that is provided directly by you, the people living with HD. Whether you're a person who's at risk, know that you carry the genetic expansion, are diagnosed with HD, or are a loved one or caregiver for someone with the disease. Whether you go to a clinic, participate in a clinical trial or not, what if there was a way for you to share your data so that it could add to what is known about Huntington's disease? I just talked a little bit about the power of a group of about 30 volunteers in HD COPE, sharing information about their lived experiences with HD. Now, imagine if we could collect the lived experiences, this data, from the over 800 people who are here at convention this weekend. And all of you watching from home and future watchers. Let's think even bigger. What about the people who aren't in this room? What about the people who might not want to be or can't take part in a clinical trial? What if we can engage the larger HD community and find a way for them to share their data, which is invaluable in shaping the future of HD science and care? Well, we can. HDSA is really proud to announce the launch of the HD Data Collective Initiative, an opportunity for all people living with HD to share their data in a structured and secure way. HDSA is partnering with RareX, the patient-driven data collection platform of Global Genes, so that people living with HD can share their data in a safe and secure way. This initiative will create a high-quality natural history study, a data set, to accelerate knowledge development through effective patient-owned and patient-driven data collection and community pooling. This data, owned and shared by you, will help scientists and clinicians better understand what it means to live with HD, so that care, better treatments, and eventually a cure for the disease come faster. It is my pleasure to introduce Carmen Trupik from RareX, who will tell us more about the HD Data Collection Initiative. Carmen is the Senior Director of Scientific Programs at Global Genes. In this role, she develops scientific strategy and partnerships to maximize the RareX data collection platform for the advancement of rare disease therapeutic research. By background and training, Carmen is a clinical genetic counselor with expertise in rare genetic diseases, including adult-onset neurodegenerative disorders like Huntington's disease. In her last position, Carmen served as the Director of Clinical Trial Services at Informed DNA, supporting patients with genetic disease to navigate clinical trial eligibility and enrollment through partnerships with biotech companies, patient advocacy groups, and academic and community clinics. Carmen will tell us more about the HD Data Collection Initiative and will answer questions from you, members of the HD community, and people living with the disease, about how your data will be collected, managed, and shared in order to advance what we know about HD and how your data can bring about change. I'm very excited for this opportunity. We all are going to have an opportunity to learn a lot about what we can do to help move things forward. Please help me in welcoming Carmen to the stage.
Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me here. This is my first HDSA conference, though as Eric alluded to, it's definitely not my first experience with patients and families impacted by Huntington's disease. So it's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about this new collaborative data collection initiative that we are launching together. Make sure. Yeah, all good. Okay, so what is this initiative and what do we hope to achieve with it? The HD Data Collection Initiative that we will be launching together will, as Eric stated, will establish a high-quality natural history study. Now, a natural history study, as many of you in this room know, is a longitudinal study. It's something that occurs over time. So right there, it tells you that we're not looking to collect a one-time set of data points. We're looking to do this and engage over time. We are developing effective patient-owned data collection, so I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. We're going to enable individuals impacted by Huntington's disease to better share their data for the acceleration of specific therapies. Over time, we intend to connect disparate data sets. So in addition to creating an initial data set that is fueled by all of you, we also intend to connect that with other data sets, including clinical data. And we also intend to develop a novel structure for engaging pre-symptomatic and at-risk individuals to not only collect data themselves, but also to screen for emerging symptoms. And how we're going to do that is we're going to enable a specific kind of in parallel data collection with care partners. So I'll tell you what that's going to look like in a bit. So I have to turn this way, sorry, a lot, because it's really small over there to my eyes. So I know we just heard from Eric, but I love what he said as we were preparing to launch this, and so I'm just going to read this. The creation of a patient-led virtual data collection initiative addresses some of the persistent inequities in healthcare research. This partnership allows people who cannot travel to the sites where most research and clinical trials occur to engage in a large-scale natural history study from their home. The HDDCI will empower people living with Huntington's disease to become true partners in research, owning their data, and sharing their HD experiences as they choose. So this is really, really important to us, this idea of addressing inequities in healthcare research. And those aren't by and large designed. Every single clinical site would love to ensure that individuals, no matter their socioeconomic background, no matter where they live, can get to one of those sites and can participate in clinical research. They want to do that. It's just not the reality for a lot of families. Right? The reality for a lot of families is that if you're living in a geographically isolated or far place from one of the large academic research centers, it presents a huge burden to get there. And that burden sometimes is financial, but often it's not. It's, maybe your care partner is caring for you and also caring for your sister and also raising 3 kids, and it's just not reasonable. So our real goal here is ensuring that everybody who can get to one of those academic medical centers and participate in one of those studies does, and they and everyone else has another way of participating in research. Okay, so this data collection initiative is a research program utilizing the RareX research platform, which I'm going to show you a little glimpse into. It is a patient-owned data platform. So what does that really mean? What it really means is when you go in and you start to collect data in this platform, you tell us how you want that data used, you tell us how you don't want it used, and the whole intent is to share that data and to share it right away. So typically in clinical research, what happens is that at a clinical site, that in-depth research data gets collected over time. And after a certain period of time, after a certain number of patients and data is accumulated, then hopefully that leads to publications and it gets published. And that can take a long time. And it's very rigorous and it's very rich, but it can take a long time. We share data every month, every single month. We publish it to our research platform, and any qualified researcher can access it. So it is a way for you to be able to say, I want my data shared, here's how I want it shared, here's how I don't want it shared, and then it gets shared, like weeks later. What it is not. So this data collection platform and initiative is not a replacement for any current research or clinical study. Right? If you can be part of Enroll HD, we want you to be part of Enroll HD. We want you to do both. But it is not a replacement for any of those. It's also not a mechanism for selling patient data. So by owning your data, that truly means ownership. We don't own the data. We steward the data. We shepherd the data at RareX, but we don't own it. You do. And so we don't monetize the data on the back end. We don't sell it. We do intend to help enable clinical trial research, including the identification of individuals who want to participate in clinical trials, but that will be done in collaboration with you, in collaboration with HDSA, and never sold. So why did HDSA choose RareX as the partner to do this? First of all, we are a global data collection platform. The platform really, we have the governance infrastructure in place to enable us to accept patient data and to share patient data. And for anybody who's familiar with GDPR requirements, and if you aren't, GDPR is a term regarding the way that data is protected in the EU. They're extremely rigorous, far more rigorous than standards in the United States regarding patient privacy and patient data. We do have GDPR compliance. We continue to manage the ongoing nature of that, which enables us to be able to share global patient data. So it's extremely safe and secure. There is no cost to any researcher who wants to access the data. Importantly, the data is highly structured and standardized. So this, in fact, is one of the reasons why RareX was founded. It was founded to ensure that patient data can be collected in a way that is so structured and standardized that it doesn't become ideas for future research. It becomes the research itself. I'll show you that. We manage the governance, so this can be very difficult for a lot of academic institutions to manage. Often in partnerships that we develop with academic institutions, they often tell us, well, we're actually really happy to share our data. We would like to share the data from our clinical studies, but our academic institution kind of doesn't have the infrastructure in place to be able to manage all these requests from different researchers, and who's really qualified to get that data, and how do you audit that data? So we manage all of that. And we streamline the researcher access to that data. So all of this is intended with this purpose of really accelerating research and therapeutic development. And we can also connect to existing data sets, so I'll show you that. For researchers, I think it's pretty obvious that if you can get access to data as it's being accumulated over time, updated every single month, that's a pretty big benefit. That data is, they know it's also consented. So actually the way that we kind of bucket our data is according to patient consent and preferences. We do have curated genetic testing data available. So what this really looks like currently and long term, the expansion of this will change, but what that looks like is that genetic test reports get uploaded by patients and families, and we actually have a genetic curation team that pulls out the most important components from that genetic test report, including in this example, including the repeat expansion size, but not just that. Like the type of testing that was done, the methodology that was done, the underlying kind of current reference genome, things that don't mean a lot to most of you, but it's really important to the researcher. So we make sure that every single one of those data points gets pulled out. And the Federated Data Access and Analysis Platform, so where the data lives when researchers access it, this is hosted through the Broad. So the Broad Institute is a collaboration between MIT and Harvard. It hosts really most of the largest data sets in collaborative research studies in the United States today. So it is a huge, very well-established platform. It's not going anywhere. The data is very safe there. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit more about who we are, Global Genes and RareX. As Eric mentioned, RareX is the research program of Global Genes. RareX was actually born out of Global Genes and then came back, and we merged in December. So Global Genes is an organization whose mission is really to provide patients, families, and patient advocates with a whole continuum of services, starting from my doctor thinks that what I have is genetic, but doesn't know what, and we can't get genetic testing, and can you help us, to I'm newly diagnosed with this ultra-rare disorder, and my doctor thinks I might be the only one in the world, and is that true, or could you help me find somebody, to we're trying to decide whether or not we should start our own foundation, can you help us with that, to we are a very well-established organization, but we're really looking to accelerate research and patient-led research. So it's sort of the entire continuum. So it makes a lot of sense for us to be part of that and part of that mission within the umbrella of a nonprofit. So every single thing that we do is as a nonprofit, which I love. It really enables us to just follow our mission and our heart. So RareX was really started to address these three problems. One, data exists, but it's in silos, right? So it's at different academic medical institutions, or it's within a particular pharmaceutical company that hosted a clinical trial and holds that data. And, as I mentioned before, this isn't on them. It's not bad on them. It's just the way the infrastructure is set up. It's very difficult to share all of that data. And in rare diseases, this is a big problem. right? Like the data that we have is so precious, and we need to make sure that we're sharing data together, that we're really pulling it together. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is that sometimes data is collected, particularly when it's collected by patient advocacy groups. Sometimes you have this really significant data collection program or a registry, but the data isn't structured and standardized in a format that really aligns with existing research standards. So that's problem number two. And problem number three, which does not apply to this group, is that in some very rare diseases, the data doesn't exist at all. So we're going to focus on problems number 1 and 2. So to address this, we have two platforms. One is the data collection platform, and for the vast majority of people in this room, that's what you will see. So that is where you would log in and go in and be able to enter and submit your own data. Then, with your consent and your preferences, that data gets migrated over to our open science data sharing platform. So that second platform is the one that researchers can access. It would look like complete gibberish to most of you, and that's because it even kind of does to me, I'm going to be honest. And that's because all of the data that gets collected gets kind of changed into numerical data points. So everything you submit about your experiences, the richness of this information in your experiences, actually becomes numeric data, which enables statistical analysis, it enables AI-based analysis, it enables machine-based learning, so that over time we can pull in other data sets and really have this very large data set that we can start to use really sophisticated computational tools to accelerate the use of that data. Okay, so I'm going to transition a little bit and show you what it looks like to become a participant. So this is the landing page. This is hosted by us at RareX. So you can see this is at huntingtonsdisease.rarex.org. If you go to this page, you will see this description. And if you were on your computer looking at this, if you're at home, you want to do it right now, go ahead. If you scroll down, there's a place where you can just get started. And that is live today. So today we start. Today we begin to collect data. It's not perfect today. And I'll tell you a little bit about our plans and how we intend together in partnership to grow that. But we would love to see many of you sign up today and get started. Once you go in and you get started, you will have this request access page. And I think this is really important. It will ask you what your role is. So maybe your role is as a patient. Maybe your role is as a caregiver. Maybe your role is someone who's lost someone that you loved to Huntington's disease. Maybe it's all three. If you click all three, you can have all three. Whenever you go in there, you'll see that there is just a place to say, like, here's what I'm working on right now, right? I'm working as the patient and I'm entering data as the patient. If you have undergone genetic testing and you know you have the expansion, but you are pre-symptomatic, you would still collect data as a patient. When you're in the platform, you'll see surveys that are in progress and those that have been completed. So you'll always be able to access everything you've done, right? This is yours. You can always access it yourself. This even includes your genetic test results. When you upload your genetic test results and our team curates them, you'll get, once the curation is complete, you'll see the curation report as well, right? So that's not hidden from you. You would see that. Here. The very first kind of to-do item that you'll have whenever you go in is the informed consent. And anyone who's ever participated in any kind of research is familiar with informed consent. It is a dynamic consent. So this isn't like a long, printed out form that you would get in clinic. Every single kind of question or topic has a learn more, so that you can go in if you don't understand something and you can learn more. You can also always reach out to our team if there's something that you don't understand. I talked about the data sharing preferences. So after informed consent, these are actually separate. So informed consent says, I want to participate in this research program. Kind of end stop. Yes, I agree to participate in this research program. The data sharing preferences agreement is where you can dive in and tell us either, I want you to use my data for all the research, like please use it. That would just be general without any restrictions. But some people don't want to be contacted for clinical trials and they don't want their data used by biopharma. That's okay. Like, that's your right. You can choose how your data is shared and not shared, and so you can tell us that. And so within that, there are the optional restrictions, and there are a number of them. We also have some people who tell us, actually sharing it with biopharma is great. Like, we want these companies to develop therapies. I'm good with that. But I only want my data used for biomedical research. Like, I don't want you to use it for, like, healthcare inequity research, for example. That's okay, too. Within that data sharing preferences agreement, there are also some additional questions that I want you to know are there because of things that we might build together, not because of what's available today, right? So some of what is in there is designed for growth. So this one, for example, asks you if you already know if you have any kind of biological sample. So if you, for example, have given blood and donated to a biorepository, so it'll ask you if you have that. It'll also ask you if you're interested in doing that in the future. So that doesn't mean that we're going to call you next week. We're not. But it enables us to really grow and build this program and to already know your preferences so that we don't reach out to you about something that you don't want to do. Similarly, it will ask you if you're interested in connecting your electronic medical record in the future. Also something that we're not going to do right away, but we want to be able to build the infrastructure for. I'll tell you that we currently, as a side note, so at RareX, we just launched this week an Open Science Data Challenge where we pulled together data from our platform across 27 ultra-rare pediatric onset neurologic disorders. All of that data is totally structured in a way that it is cross-comparable to each other, which is incredible. This is not typically something you find in research where these 27 different disorders, all the data has been collected in exactly the same way to compare them. But in that program, we've done that, we've pulled this all together, and we currently have an what's called Open Science Data Challenge. It's like a hackathon. And we have hundreds of researchers and data scientists actively right now requesting data and working on specific challenges within that. And for that challenge, we actually partnered with an external group that was able to pull in and curate some of the electronic medical record data on some of those groups. So this is very much something that is on the roadmap. We're already creating the partnerships to do, and we'll be looking to explore how we may do that in the future together here. This one right here says, do you want to share your contact information with patient advocacy groups that support your diagnosis? So this is important to know. This is your contact information only. So if you say yes to this, HDSA will get from us, like, here are all the people who signed up, right? Name, email address. They will not get any clinical data on you, right? So that is private information. So when we share data, we share it in a protected, private, de-identified way. Now, I want to make this really clear. There's a difference between the way de-identified data gets shared if it's patient level and if it's aggregate. So we share data in a de-identified, meaning people can't figure out who you are, way, but it is patient level, and that's really important to researchers because they can see all the way across how one person answered every single thing, and they can see it longitudinally over time, right? In a lot of data sharing programs, the data that gets shared is aggregate, meaning like, here are some statistical analyses and outcomes of our data, and we will share that with you, which is really important for things like medical management and for understanding what are the full symptoms of this disease and what are the onset of certain symptoms. It's like, that's super important, that aggregated data. But what that does not allow is it does not allow other researchers to say, this is interesting, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna explore this data and I'm going to apply my own hypotheses to it, right? So for that, you need patient level data. Like, here's patient 1, 2, 3, and all the way across, here's what I see today, and here's what I see 6 months from now and a year from now longitudinally. So this is not a single research study, right? What we're building here is a platform and the infrastructure to support all the research, to share it with all the researchers, right? We have already had conversations with CHDI about sharing with them, about connecting their data with what we're collecting through the HDID, through that, identification number, so that when we talk about that single level data, that patient level data, not only do we have that within our data set, and we know that they have that within their data sets, but then those can be connected. So we see it all the way across both data sets. After you do that, the very first thing that you'll answer is what's called a health and development survey. The health and development survey is, by design, really simple. Really, really simple. It goes head to toe, and it asks if you have symptoms in particular areas. Now, some of the things that it might ask about, maybe you have, and maybe they're not related to Huntington's disease at all. That's okay. That's okay. Because what often happens in healthcare research, and I've worked in clinical genetics for 22 years, I've seen this over and over again. What often happens in healthcare research is we know, as medical providers, as clinicians, we think we know a whole lot about a particular disease based on what's already been published. So we take what we know from what's been published, and that's what forms all of our questions, right? And what that prevents is it prevents us from learning things that are new, that we didn't recognize, or that are rare. Like, maybe there are certain neurologic symptoms associated with Huntington's disease that aren't well described because they're not common, but they're still important, and a subset of the population will develop them. So when you go through that, don't worry about, is this really a Huntington's disease symptom or not? Like, should I be putting it in here? Don't worry about that. That's for the researchers to decide, right? Our job is just to give them the data to work with. So I'll show you an example of what happens once you say yes. So you go through there and it'll say something like, do you have any problems at all with your hearing? And if you say yes, then once you finish the health and development survey, it's going to have a hearing survey for you. So you don't then have to answer a whole bunch of questions about hearing if you said no. That's a total waste of your time, right? I already just said this. So what we call the level 2 surveys are what happens if you say yes. So if you say, like, yes, I do have problems with my hearing, it provides you a hearing survey that you can answer. And then when you go in, this one is for eyes and vision. So if you said, yes, I do have some problems with my vision, it would open this one up, and then it'll start to ask you questions like, do you have any problems with eye movement? Do you have any degree of visual impairment? If you say yes, then it'll ask you, at what age did you begin to develop those symptoms? At what age were you diagnosed? And then the answers to these open up another survey, right? So each survey is not intended to take you an hour. A lot of these surveys will take you 10 minutes. because we really want to maximize your time and be super respectful of it and use this sort of branching logic to only give you what you've already said yes to. I'm going to skip that. Okay, so some final thoughts. One, remember that this is a partnership, right? So we are going to work together to build and improve beyond what you see today. If you go home and you are fired up about this and you start entering data, at some point you're going to say, oh, there's nothing that's specific to Huntington's disease in there. That's true, because we're going to build it together, right? Like, this is day one, and we are building that out together in partnership. And when I say partnership, I don't just mean RareX and HDSA, right? I mean in partnership. So we want your feedback, and we even want some of you to step up and say, like, I want to be an ambassador for this program. I think this is amazing. Maybe you have like a sister who has never been to an HDSA conference, who has never participated in research, because it's just hard, right? It's like hard to get out and to be a part of those things sometimes with everything else going on in life and all the caring that you're doing. But they could do this, right? So if you are really fired up about that, let us know. We want ambassadors for this program who like really dive deep and answer all the things and help us to figure out what else we need to build, and then kind of get out and be an ambassador to the larger community. We are also going to be collaborating with clinical experts to choose the most relevant and impactful patient-reported outcome measures to implement. So I didn't talk about this yet. I'm guessing many of you, but not all of you, have heard the term patient-reported outcome measure, or sometimes they're called PROMs. Personally, I've heard two different definitions of patient-reported outcome measures. Some people say a patient-reported outcome measure is anything you ask a patient or a family to give you, and they tell you. That's a patient-reported outcome measure. Some people will say, like, no, that's not true. That's patient-reported data. That's patient-reported symptoms. But a patient-reported outcome measure is anything that is a standardized, validated assessment that systematically asks you information. So if for anybody in this room who's participated in any kind of clinical research, and I know that's a lot of you, you have answered some of these. You have been in clinic, and you've had a clinical trial coordinator or a doctor go through and ask you questions that are maybe part of a quality of life survey. Maybe they are part of a mood survey, or maybe it's the HD-specific clinical outcome assessment measure that has been developed. The point is that these measures have been developed by clinicians to be used in a way where you can collect data about the impact of diseases to an individual's life, right? The impact to their life. You can collect these in a way that are super standardized, that are comparable across data sets, that are comparable across studies, and increasingly, regulatory agencies. So for us in this room, that primarily means the FDA, but we have to think globally, and so that's not just the FDA, right? It's the EMA in Europe, other regulatory agencies. Regulatory agencies want to see patient-reported outcome measures. They're asking for this data. They need this data. They want to know that if they approve a therapy, it has true impact, right? And how do they know if it has true impact? Well, these measures enable them to see, like, yes, over time, my quality of life improved. My mood improved, right? Here are, like, cognitively, I'm doing much better. These are the kind of things that they want to see. Now, some of that will still need to be assessed in clinic, no question, right? But some of those patient-reported outcome measures that traditionally a clinical trial coordinator or your doctor would sit down and ask you about, there's no reason you can't just do that on your own. So there are many of those out there. We will work with a clinical expert advisory group to determine which ones of those are most impactful and most likely to really fuel research and clinical trial development. We will license those and we will implement those on the platform. I think I have 12 minutes for questions, which is kind of about perfect, so I'm really pleased about that. So happy to take your questions. You want the mic?
Yeah, sorry, as we're swapping mics here, there are going to be microphones on the floor, so if you got a question, please just raise your hand. Again, we really want this to be an opportunity for you people in the room who are patients, family members, people living with HD, to ask about this, because this platform, this opportunity is for you, by you, and this is your chance to ask Carmen. We will have opportunities in the future to learn more and ask more questions, but go for it today.
Okay, great talk. The question I have is, today, when you said we can do this, are you having set up a booth the way they did with the blood work yesterday? Or do we have to go home and get on our iPads to do this?
Oh, hold on one second. We are not planning to sit down and actively enroll people today. If you have a computer and you want to do it like over the coffee break and ask me for questions, I'm happy to come and help you. I think our goal today was really to launch it, to let those of you who are really excited about getting started right away at least go in and complete the informed consent and your data sharing preferences. But we also know that this is a really packed conference and we want you to take advantage of it. And so you can get a little bit started today and then do most of it at home.
Okay, thank you very much.
We'll think about that, I think, for future conferences for sure.
I'll actually say something after you're done.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong.
My question is, how does this system affect patients and caregivers in remote areas like Alaska, and how does this affect their treatment?
So this system was absolutely designed for people in remote places, especially the remote places where you don't have an academic, center of excellence nearby. So I don't think it's going to impact your medical management, right? The way that your disease is managed in any way in the short term, in any way. You are simply giving us your experiences and providing data that's going to fuel the research. Now, down the road, we certainly hope that this large collaborative data collection effort is going to provide more data that will help change care for everyone. But on an individual level, it's not going to change your medical management.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. You said this is a global platform. I just want to make sure my data is not going to go to Mars. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. The question I have, so I understand the patient data being put in there, and as it applies to researchers being able to use that data to look across the patient level and the aggregate and whatnot. What about the caregiver data and those of us that are gene negative? Mm-hmm. How is our data used, and how does that help solve and bring an end to Huntington's?
I feel like you were just placed in the audience to remind me that I forgot to talk about this. So thank you. Really, truly, thank you. I forgot to talk about this. So I talked about how there are the different roles, right? You can go in there as a patient, as a caregiver, as someone who's lost someone you love, but also what we will be building together with HDSA. I am so excited about this. So this notion of care partners, I love this phrase that the HD community has, care partners, because care partners, to me, that implies not just a caregiver, right? Many of you who are affected in this room have a care partner who maybe is helping you with some things, but I mean, we all look to our partners to help us with some things. This life is a collaboration. So what we're looking to build together that is really novel in its structure is a way to do side-by-side data collection between someone who is known to carry an HD gene expansion, so that triplet repeat expansion, and so therefore we know to be at risk. But today doesn't have any obvious symptoms, And for all therapeutic research, but especially for anything that is gene specific, right? Anything that is targeting the underlying cause of Huntington's disease, we all know that the earlier you can implement a therapy, the better the outcome is probably going to be if that therapy is successful, right? And so we need therapies that address the disease in individuals who have relatively advanced disease. We also need therapies that address very early on, like how much of this can we just prevent from ever happening to begin with? And so this side-by-side data collection, here's what we intend to do. If I am known to carry a triplet repeat expansion for Huntington's disease, but I currently don't have any symptoms that I am aware of, I can go in and I can begin to collect data as a patient without symptoms. And then I can designate my care partner. Right? So I can designate my care partner. Maybe that's my husband, maybe that's my best friend, maybe that's my sister. I'll let them fight over it, whatever. I'm going to designate that person as my care partner. And then every single time I answer a survey, it's going to notify them that they need to answer a survey. And there's a particular window that we would like that done within. And then over time, what we want to see is there a point at which maybe the cognitive questionnaires or the mood questionnaires, maybe there's something that diverges, right? Maybe initially my partner says like, nope, 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 right? Like she's all good. And then a year from now, I still think I'm all good, but he does not, right? We want to see that, we want to follow that, and we want to enable ways that we can use that information from your care partners to help to identify these very early symptoms that would be a trigger that you should be seen clinically for an evaluation. I think that's going to be incredible to that early stage research. The more traditional caregiver role is already completely fully built in and is something that's actually really, really important to regulatory agencies as well, to think about how does this condition not only affect the individual, the patient, but how does this condition affect the entire family? And when we have data where the caregiver says, like, my life is so much better now, like, you know, she's sleeping through the night and her mood is improved, like our whole family is doing better, that data will be captured.
Very interesting research. I have HD, and my question is there an age of onset for the study? Like, I've been told I've been too old for studies. I've had my Huntington for about 16 years.
There is no lower age, there is no upper age. All individuals are welcome to put their data in. Remember, I told you this isn't a single research study. This is an enablement platform to support lots of research.
I'm short. Do you want me to stand up? Oh my God. I think this is great. I think this is a fascinating, exciting thing to do. What about the existing centers of excellence? Like, how is that going to be communicated? Because a lot of patients work through the Center of Excellence. Mm-hmm. How are they going to find out about this and what's going on?
So we're actually talking to them tomorrow. So many of them will be in the same room tomorrow, and I'll be giving, a slightly different talk to them with lots of time for questions and answers. So we'll be talking with them really closely. We want them all to have this data, right? So we're not looking to change anything about their study. If anything, CHDI in the Enroll HD study, they're really excited that this could boost participation for them too. because individuals who to date have not been able to travel and who haven't been able to make it to one of those sites can participate here, and then maybe there's a point at which we identify them as a really great candidate for a study that they then say, okay, now's the time. I'm gonna figure out how to make my life work to get there. So very collaborative with them. We will absolutely be inviting every single one of them to request data access.
Quick question over here. Also, hello, Carmen. Nice to see you. I guess it's a two-part. One is this a U.S.-only initiative, or can people from around the world participate? And then, is it mobile-friendly, knowing there's a lot of young people in the HD community who might prefer to participate on their mobile phone?
Yep. It is global. Now, there are, I'm gonna say there are 4 parts to global participation when we think about like how to be accessible and compliant. One is translation, right? So if you think about like, we'll take one example. Let's think about individuals living in Mexico. Okay, so the first thing is the platform in Spanish? Well, the platform today can be translated into Spanish. There's a super easy little button, like down at the bottom. You just, have it translate. But it's not natively translated yet. That will be done by the end of this year. So it will be natively translated, all of the surveys translated into Spanish. So that's one. But to be clear, if somebody was English speaking and wanted to come in and do all of the surveys, regardless of where they live in the world, they can do that today. Right? So we are global today. We have the governance and the privacy to do that for anybody anywhere as long as they can speak English. We are working on the translation bits. So translation within the program is one, within the platform is one. Translation outside of the platform, meaning do we have like staff available? Do we have educational materials in Spanish? We're currently working on that. Like all of that will be rolled out later this year and it will all be natively in Spanish. The third part is, do we have the compliance in place to be able to share the data that they give us, right? And so that's the part that we've done a ton of work on to establish GDPR compliance. We know we can share that data back out. So that one's done globally, which is a massive lift. So that part's done. And then the fourth part is, can we kind of actively promote the platform in other countries? Different countries individually have different requirements around that. So some of them we can already, the ones we can't we're working on. For the Americas, we will have that whole list done by the end of this year, with the exception of people who only speak French in Canada, which is a very small percentage because they're brilliant and they are all bilingual. But that would be the small bit because French will come early next year.
That's it for questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Feel free to come find me.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for those questions. And Carmen, thank you so much for sharing the information about what you, the folks in this room, can do, and the folks of you who are watching this can do to take part in research in a way that you haven't before, in a way that you actually can do right now. Carmen had shared a website a little bit earlier, but I'm going to ask them to throw up a slide really quick. If you've got a smartphone that has camera capabilities, you can take a picture of this QR code and go immediately to the link that Carmen had provided. You can start this, well, don't start it now because there's a lot more to come right after I get off the stage, but you can start the process right now. We're also going to push a notification out through the convention app, so anyone who's using that on their phone, you're going to get that information. Anyone who's looking on the convention app outside of this room, you're going to have that information. I mentioned before that HDSA does webinars. Stay tuned in the near future because you're going to have another way to access this information. We want you to enjoy the rest of convention, like Carmen said, but we also want you to know that you can start this process now. You can start your role in providing your data to change the way that we understand HD and to start moving research forward even faster.